Edgar, Edgar, Edgar. You either hate him, or are 5 years old and love him. Okay, that was mean. I'm sorry, Edgar Mains. But there is no doubt that he is the most hated brawler in Brawl Stars, justified or not. In this video, I'm going to talk about Edgar's basics, and then the topic of noob stomping and how it relates to Edgar, and why it makes him so difficult for Brawl Stars to properly balance. Make sure to join our Discord server, and link will be in the description. Also, make sure to subscribe to keep up with the PowerPoints. Finally, a big thanks to Pika for helping me out with this video. First off, his stats. He has a slightly above average health of 6600, an extremely short range of 2 tiles, and a very fast movement speed. His main attack is very interesting, however. He throws out 2 punches for 1080 damage each, and heals himself by 369 health per punch, with an extremely fast reload speed. Next, his super. Edgar's super sees him jump into the air anywhere in a range of 6.67 tiles, and once he lands on the ground, he has a temporary speed boost of 200 extra points for 2.5 seconds. Furthermore, his super automatically charges up after 30 seconds. With this information, we can tell what Edgar's niche is: pure assassin. His super and movement speed allow him a lot of mobility, which helps him get to enemies and get out quickly. But we can zero in even further on him, as a brawler that relies on the opponents either being low health, but more importantly, those who are unable to deal with close range. But why is he so good against these brawlers specifically? Well, of course, there's the super to get to them quickly. But most importantly, 2 things: his fast reload speed, and his mechanic of healing after every shot. He doesn't deal a lot of damage with each shot, but he can definitely add up with his reload speed. However, his damage isn't as important as his healing ability. Against brawlers with basically no close range defense, he literally can't be countered, as he will heal a large amounts of damage because of his fast reload speed and the lack of a real defense against him. Take 8-Bit for example. Without his teleport gadget, he doesn't have much defense against brawlers at a short range. Despite being able to deal a very large amount of damage and having a large health, it barely matters, since Edgar is able to reload extremely quickly and stay on top of the 8-Bit, continuously healing damage while simultaneously dealing damage to the 8-Bit. The healing Edgar has uniquely suits him to dealing against brawlers without close ranged abilities, since they simply don't have an answer for his healing ability. With all of his basics out of the way, let's get into the real treat: Edgar and noob stomping. So what exactly is a noob stomper, and why is Edgar one? Well, noob stompers are brawlers that are primarily exceedingly good at lower skill levels, or in other words, against noobs, and are therefore easy to pick up and play, but difficult for newer players to learn how to play against. So how does this apply to Edgar? Well, first of all, there's his main attack. Unlike someone like Piper, who you actually have to learn how to aim well to actually play well, you don't have to learn how to aim to play him. In fact, the only thing you need to do to learn how to aim with him is to find out where the big red button is. Furthermore, with his main attack, you get extra heals from it, and there's a fast reload speed. This means that there's basically no reason to conserve your ammo or anything, and you can simply just spam his attacks at your enemy and be rewarded for it with extra health while dealing damage at the same time. And then there's his super. First of all, it doesn't require actually getting damage on enemies to charge up, like basically every other brawler. So you could just bush camp the entire 30 seconds and charge up your super with 0 threat. Furthermore, it allows you to basically get right on top of any enemy within a 7-tile radius to start spamming attacks on them. Overall, Edgar is a very easy brawler to pick up and has an extremely low skill floor. But why do noobs struggle against him so much? Well, first of all, they don't understand how to counter him. To counter Edgar with someone like Bull, you need to properly conserve your ammo. Yes, Bull does a lot of damage at a close range, but if you waste ammo on getting little to no damage against Edgar, which many noobs do, you will get fried by the Edgar. Furthermore, a lot of noobs don't know how to properly use anti-aggro tools to their advantage against Edgar. Let's take for example Barley. Often people at a lower skill level can't really predict when the Edgar will jump on them, or simply don't run the right kit to face off against Edgar. For example, they might react too late with the slow gadget, and even if it's used, the Edgar will still kill the Barley. Or the Barley will use the heal gadget instead of the slow one, and will therefore get cooked by Edgar every time he jumps on the Barley. Finally, positioning. Noobs don't often know how to position themselves well, and therefore will be punished by the Edgar. Many times they don't take into consideration that Edgar can jump over walls, and for a good range as well. This often leads to these players to getting within the 7 tile range of Edgar's jump range, and therefore being killed by him. Also, a lot of noobs make the mistake of grouping up, which with the right, or technically wrong comp, will allow Edgar to potentially team wipe, or simply just charge up his super again. Overall, Edgar and noob stomping are synonymous, and a part of this relationship with noob stomping leads to the next topic, Edgar's status as a rock, paper, scissors brawler, as put by Pika. There's almost no variability with his interactions, nor does it particularly revolve around too much skill. 9 out of 10 times you will win against the same brawlers in the same scenario, and lose against the same brawlers assuming equal skill level. Because of this, he's basically only viable as a last pick brawler. If you pick him any earlier, the enemy will just go one of his many counters such as Shelly, Griff, or Gale. However, if you get last pick, you can see the opponent's team comp, and whether Edgar would be good or not against those brawlers, truly showing how he's a pure specialist brawler. His status as a rock, paper, scissors brawler and a noob stomper have led him to an extremely unique position in the meta and balancing as a whole. In fact, it's extremely difficult for Brawl Stars to actually make him balance, and they're honestly better off keeping him unbalanced for the foreseeable future. But why is this? Well, he's very bad in the meta currently, and rarely sees any competitive play unless the comp is absolutely perfect for him. He simply has too many counters, especially with the advent of hypercharges, being able to either out DPS him or have an anti-aggro mechanic to force him to run away. With every new hypercharge being released, Edgar's hypercharge is looking less and less impressive, and even though it's not a bad hypercharge for him, the rest of his stats are just so underwhelming that he simply can't compete in the current meta. On the other hand, as I mentioned before, Edgar is extremely good at lower skill levels and against noobs. Bad positioning, lack of knowledge, and lack of patience all combine to make noobs uniquely weak to Edgar specifically, along with Edgar's mechanics of spam and pray. Often, he's what most people think are the best brawler in the game when they are first starting playing. Well, now we've established that he's one of the worst brawlers in the game to actually good players, and one of the best brawlers in the game to actually bad players. Because of this, Edgar's balancing is put into a very precarious position. Pros all think he's basically useless, and rarely use him, arguing that he desperately needs a buff to his stats to become competitive. On the other hand, noobs thinks that he's too strong, and any buff to his stats will become an absolute horror to face off against at lower skill levels, and make the game feel unfun to those players. Because of this, an Edgar rework is so difficult to implement, as it has to take into consideration the polar opposites of the player base, which have two completely opposite opinions on what should be done with Edgar. Due to this, the Edgar rework, despite being announced a long time ago, has been delayed for so long, simply due to how difficult it would be to implement and please everyone. Now, let's talk about his unlockables. Edgar's first gadget is Let's Fly, which sees him increase his supercharged speed by 525% for 4 seconds, letting him charge up 82.5% of his super for the duration of the gadget. This is a great gadget for Edgar as it removes one of his biggest weaknesses, the time required for him to charge his super. Edgar relies extremely heavily on his super if you couldn't tell, and so he's often a sitting duck if you can catch him without his super. This fixes that problem and can get him into the action immediately, or simply just give him an escape in a sticky situation. His other gadget is also very useful, and that's Hardcore, which gives him a 3300 health shield that weakens over time. The tried and trusted decaying shield strikes again, and is pretty important actually for Edgar, as it sort of helps him get over his rock, paper, scissors classification, and keeps him alive for interactions he normally would lose, while also letting him be extra safe for matchups that he would win. The only problem is, well, the other gadget is just so important for him. Now for his star powers. His first star power is Hard Landing, which sees Edgar also deal 1350 damage to nearby enemies upon landing. This is merely an okay star power, as like the shield, it does help him win a few interactions he would normally lose. However, its usefulness is limited by the fact that its damage that it deals doesn't help charge his super. So at the end of the day, it's lost supercharge, which is so very important to Edgar. His other star power is Fisticuffs, which sees him receive 25% more healing from each punch he lands. It's simple but extremely effective. This extra healing is also a big difference maker with some of his interactions, and is overall just super useful for Edgar to not only stay alive during the fight, but for him to regain enough health to not be immediately gunned down right after winning a fight. Finally, his Hypercharge. Edgar's Hypercharge is quite simple, and it sees him gain charging speed and reload speed increases for a few seconds. This is quite good for Edgar as 1. He can charge it relatively quickly since he has automatic supercharge, which extends to his hypercharge, and 2. It allows him a lot of team-wide potential since he can easily cycle hypercharged supers while also having an increased reload speed. Overall, it's a really good hypercharge for Edgar. But Edgar is just not good enough right now for the hypercharge to really make that much of a difference in his placement in the meta. Overall, Edgar is one of the most unique brawlers in the game when it comes to his balancing. Rarely do you see an unbalanced brawler that is best left unbalanced, but here we are with Edgar. If you buff him too much, you risk running the wrath of the lower skill players. And if you nerf him too much, you risk him never being played by higher skill players. Seems fitting he would cause so much trouble, right? Thanks to Newglance and Pika for helping out with this video, and anyways, thanks for watching. Watch this video, or this playlist, or join the Discord server.